Hi everybody, my name is Anne. Thanks for joining me on Art on the Creek. We're in my home studio in Parker, Colorado, and this is part 2 of our 2-part video of how to eliminate the clutter from a reference photo and come up with a nice painting. So in our last video, we got our drawing down. We learned from a reference photo that was really cluttered, one that I took actually, how to eliminate that clutter, focus on what you want to draw. And now we've got our drawing down, so let's go ahead and take that drawing and turn it into a watercolor painting. We'll go over shading and dimension and how to create a really loose version of one of the deer that came to visit us in our backyard. Are you ready? Let's go do some painting. And let's see, what kind of brush should I use today? I think I'm going to go with I'm going to start with my Princeton number 8 round. The paints that I'm going to use, because they're still out from a painting I did yesterday, these are the Mungyo Gallery Professional Paints. You can use whatever you like. I'm just going to use these. Get the crumbs off of here. All right, so now we know what we're going to draw. We've decluttered the painting. Let's go ahead and give this a whirl. I'm going to start by putting a little bit more green on the trees than what we have in real life here. So this is going to be just kind of a little bit of background. And I've got some darker green over here, so let's drop some of that in. Ultramarine and lemon yellow, and I've got some purples here that will help bring that green down to a more earthy tone so we can get some shadows in there. And I'm just kind of dropping this in wet on wet. Get a little bit more, get this wet again here. And let's just start with the tree. I want to get just a light wash down, leave some space, use some dry brush there. And for those of you who don't know, dry brush technique is when you skim the brush across the paper like so, where you let the ridges of the paper create texture for you. And now I'm just putting in the lines of where I want these branches to go. Not really making the branches yet, just marking them. I'll start a new little palette over here. I want this to be fairly sheer, so let's just I'll just spread that little bit around with water. This will be our lightest tone. And I went a little too far, so let me get a paper towel and just blot that up. Easy peasy. That's one of the reasons why you want to use good paper. It's a lot more forgiving if you have a little part that just flies where it's not supposed to. And I see I've got another one here doing that same thing. Let me see if I can lift that. I've got a damp brush and we'll just scrub it a little. Oh, no problem. That's a good mix of what a good rock color would look like. Get a little bit more of the pink in there. And I just want to put this in some places, not all. Now we're going to go in with a yellow ochre, which is right here. And we can put this over here. And we'll just kind of mix that with what we've got here on these rocks. Now I can really show you this dry brush technique on the tree. So you've got your brush, you've got your belly full of paint, and what we're going to do is just skim it along the surface of the paint. I'm barely putting any, surface of the paper rather, I'm barely putting any pressure at all. And what that will do is give you this natural texture and kind of just put it under the branches. All right, now we're going to go back into the yellow ochre. And let's just kind of give that a glaze over the tree here, using that side of your brush, but staying to this more lit side of the tree. Just have some warmth, and I'm going around the tail here because I think I do want to put her little tail in. Creating some shadows so that these will be the leaves on the trees that are closer to us, because it's kind of a backlit, side lit backlit, because we are in the shade as we're looking at this deer. Go beyond what I did a little bit because it's looking a little too neat on the edges. Now let's focus on the deer. So I've got this as the yellow ochre here. Let me go in with some of that Van Dyke brown again. And this will be a good shade for our deer. We'll mix some yellow ochre with that Van Dyke brown, and that'll just give a nice, kind of a good leathery brown. I don't know, a good natural brown. And I'm just going to add a touch of indigo. Indigo is a good friend for you to darken things up. 4, this will work. This is a number 4 silver black velvet. And I'm going to go into this mix here, and we're just going to add some texture on our deer. Now I'm holding it sideways again because we're going to go with the dry brush technique, but we're going to add some of her fur texture here. Just establishing the base layer of her fur, keeping the darker portions toward the back of her. And now with just a wet brush, we can blend this out, letting those places where we place the pigment so kind of rough, letting that texture just naturally create. I feel like this needs to be just a little bit darker, so we'll go into that darker brown. And add some of the dark under here. All right, now let's go to her tail. The mule deer tail is white underneath, so I'm going to do a little bit of negative painting here. I'm going to come up like so and just leave space. Connect it to her right there. A little bit of a shadow here where it would be connected. And then the tip of the tail is black. There, and we'll add some of these darker bits here. Let's go ahead and add her nose. Leave a highlight on the top and for the nostril. And then her lips are black as well, as is her eye. And remember, we want to leave a highlight for her eye. As soon as you get the eye in, they kind of start looking like an animal. Now I've got that wet brush, but it's damp, so I'm going to blend out her nose a little bit here so the highlighted areas can just simply be a little bit lighter. And I think I'm going to go in with this wet brush here and just soften this lip line a little. Trying to leave a little bit of a lighter space over the eye and under it. And now let's talk about this ear back here a little bit. Just going over it a little bit more, and then we'll add some fuzziness coming in from both directions here. Now we want to get a shadow here to accentuate her jawline. So what we want to do to bring that jawline forward is to put the shadow underneath it. So we're going to come down here, and this is really just wet on dry. The same brown that we were using before, that Van Dyke brown. And we'll just drop that pigment in Take it around her ear too. And we can just bring that down all the way. Clean water on the left side of her neck here so that the pigment can have a place to soften the edge, blend in a little bit. Now you'll notice with every little thing you do, you need to tweak something next to it. That's actually great. I think I lost one of her hips here. Let me put that back in. Get her hip line more defined. At this point, it's really just a matter of kind of sketching with your brush. And then we'll take the water that's on our brush and just pull this one down a little to soften that edge. And I'm just using water to kind of soften those lines. Now I'm very satisfied with the deer. I like her fur. I like the way it's going. The one thing that I think is confusing my eye is this part here, this white under here makes it look like she's got a white chin. And I don't like that. So let's go back into the yellow ochre. Mix it with a touch of that Van Dyke brown. And I'm just going to get some shadow going under here so that we can definitely end her chin. Getting some of those shadow contours in. And now I've got just a wet brush. And I will get those shadows in. Go a little bit darker down here. I think wet on wet is probably one of your best friends when it comes to adding shadows to animal contours. It's just an excellent way to build those shadows up and make it work for you. And I think that looks a lot better. That needed a little more contrast there. I really like the white around her eye, but I think that we just need a little bit more definition on the underside of that ear. So I'm just going to very lightly go around it. The rim of her ear, give it a little black tip. There we go. Same with her tail. I think it needs just a little bit more. And now for our tree. Well, I've got this indigo on my brush. Do a fine line down the tree. A little bit of shadow where the branches come out. And we can add some bark lines. This is where you can be really creative. I'm barely letting the brush touch the paper, and I'm just staggering these lines wherever I think they will look good. Sometimes you'll find you have some natural shading in your tree from where you put the base layers, and that will help you to create some natural shadows and texture in the bark. All right, so there's the tree so far. Now let's go in and look at the branches on the tree. I think I'm going to go in with the Van Dyke brown and a little bit of indigo just to make it a little bit darker. And let's work on these branches here. Now, we can make them as quirky as we want to. That's kind of what I'm going for. And I know I don't have her tongue in yet. I want to do that last. So I'm leaving space. It's kind of a good idea to have little broken connections going through your little tree leaves that you made, just so you can kind of better define how your tree branch is going. This branch is going to connect here. All right, that's all for the branch. Now let's put in a little bit of her tongue. That's it. I'm going to mix it with this brown again so I can get a real browny pink. And that's going to be her tongue. So I'm going to shade just the bottom of it. And then I'll rinse that off. And with a damp brush, I will fill in the rest of the tongue so that it has space to migrate. And that should end up giving it some pretty natural dimension. If it doesn't, we'll come back and add just a little bit more pigment. That's all I want to do with the tongue for now. And let's see here. Let's go back to these rocks for a minute while this is drying, because we do need to put in some little flowers for her and all that kind of thing. But I'm going to go into the yellow ochre first. I'll put this back over here in our rock mixture. And let's just swipe over here with some more of this yellow ochre. Now we'll let that dry. And let's see, I think for the background, I'll go in with some of this Van Dyke Brown and some of the burnt sienna, which was this one. Just really light here. And then we'll lift it off. So that's what we'll be dealing with, a very pale kind of a background. Very watery mix. Just bring it in here. It's okay if it overlaps a little, because what you're doing is lifting it off right away. And then we can go back in and clean up that line on the tree. Now what I want to do here is just keep going up to the tree, but keep it extremely pale. Getting some of that green just to fill in a bit. All right, and we'll come back and clean all that up. So first cleanup, let's take a look at giving this a dry. I want to make sure everything is very dry before we continue. And the one thing I want to make sure that I do is I don't want it to look like it's been cut and paste. So I'm just going to smudge all of these lines around her leg here and just blot that off, because I need that background to kind of be a little bit more seamless. Back into the indigo with a little bit of burnt sienna. Make that nice and dark. And we can go in here and accentuate the lines on these rocks too. Let's see here, we can do the hooves. Let's get those in. All right, I think I'm happy with that. And now for the rocks. I'm gonna go back in with some of this indigo, and I am having a hard time getting the black I want, so I'm gonna go ahead and just add a little bit of black to this. So this is where you want to remember how you make these look dimensional when you are doing your sketch. So we're just going to bring our brush in different directions here. And there's some layers on that rock there. This one might come out this way and have some structure coming down here for our gal to stand on. Same thing down this way. So you're just kind of using your brush to create those shadows on the rocks so that you given it kind of a stair-step nature. There we go. And now I'm going to go into the Crimson Lake. And let's just add a few blossoms here on the tree. And then I'm going to go with the lightest pink, well, not the lightest one. I'm going to go with this cold pink here. Not quite an opera rose, but you could use an opera rose. And let's add some blossoms right here next to her. Now the one thing she does need is she needs a shadow. So let's go into our ultramarine and we'll just kind of mix it over here. Get a nice blue-gray, and let's give her some purchase on the rocks here. we go. And there you have it. That brings us to the close of this two-part video of how to take a cluttered reference photo, declutter it a little bit, make a good quality sketch for you to work from, and from there, create a good watercolor painting. I hope you enjoyed my illustration of this little deer today that visited our backyard, and I hope that these 12 points that I've highlighted in each of these two videos will help you on your watercolor journey. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye now.